Hi, I'm Julie, and I'm ready to record my first video for you guys. I am excited and honored to be here, those two things. And finally got everything all set up. I got the lighting the way I want to. I got the background the way I want to. I was even messing around with some phone apps that help me look good. They have filters, which I would apply subtly, but I found out that I really couldn't control the sound input that much, and that is what's really important for me. So the video is going to be secondary. So anyway, enough with that. You guys are also experimenting with videos, it looks like. So I'm Julie, as I said before. I'm going to do just a brief introduction and tell you kind of what I'm going to be talking about when it comes to freedom. Some really cool topics. And okay, first, it's not really an elevator speech, it's an introduction. I am an entrepreneur primarily, and I used to be a wellness entrepreneur until I sold everything I had and decided to move to Europe. Southeast Europe is where I'm at right now. So right now, my main focus is on helping health and wellness entrepreneurs with time, location, and financial independence. And I do that via helping them use or leverage their own expertise and intellectual property in order to create a digital offering. I know that sounds like a lot. And 2 years ago, people weren't really getting the whole thing. Like, what do you mean? I don't get this whole selling something online thing. But I think a lot of people know what that is right now. So that's basically what I do. I'm also a digital nomad. I do everything remotely. I've been doing it that way for a long time. I'm a pack leader of 3 dogs, and I am a really good person to talk to about freedom. So I'm going to talk about a lot of juicy things, but it's not going to be about anything political because I'm not really interested in that. And I also manage to piss off people on both sides because I don't speak to either one of those sides. To me, it's like watching a football game, and I'm like not even into football. Okay, so I just want to make sure I am recording. Yes, we are recording. Okay. So, yes, with this, I am kind of a philosopher. And what that means is I typically like to explore something in depth and from every angle. So, not just the right and the left, like most people do, black or white, but also from above, below, and from every other angle. And sometimes I'm my own devil's advocate. So, and it's not about me being wishy-washy. That's just the way my brain works. I'm an INTJ, and we just explore everything from every angle because we get tired of hearing only one perspective on something. So I'm going to talk about that within the context of my own philosophical filter, the way my brain works, which is kind of balanced both left and right brain. So I want to talk about what it means objectively and what it means subjectively. I'm going to talk about freedom of, from, and in, and just kind of speaking from my everyday life and speaking to other people, primarily female entrepreneurs. So a couple things I can speak to and can't speak to. I have not lived in the United States for 5 years. I don't have any kids, so I don't know anything about that stuff. There's enough people that are talking about that stuff anyway. But I do know what it's like to be of a certain age, over 50. I know what it's like to live in more than one place. And yeah, being a digital nomad, obviously. So here's some of the topics that I want to talk about before I dive into the first one. And the first one's going to be a nice, juicy one. But here's some other things I'm looking at. This is kind of like my little sneak peek here. The ability to do whatever I want when I get older. Theoretically, I can do whatever I want. But also talk about structure and discipline and mastery, those kinds of things. Centralization versus decentralization, without getting into the political thing. How you spend your money, spending versus saving and frugality. Let's explore that. Technology is a huge one. I can definitely speak to that. And financial freedom. What does that mean exactly? Everyone likes to talk about 6 figures, 7 figures, and 8 figures. I mean, it used to be 7 figures or 6 figures, and now all of a sudden it's grown and you're not really successful unless you're making like millions. So I don't think that's necessarily the case, but we're going to explore that. Of course, time, location, and financial independence. The freedom to create our own retirement. Cultural freedom. What does that mean in different parts of the world? What does it mean to actually earn or fight for freedom? Let's see. Freedom to have 2 dogs for friends. I wanna keep some things a little bit light too. Defining success on our own terms. Freedom of choice, or if you have too many choices, freedom from too many choices. Also freedom to own our own choices. Being a Gen Xer will also play into this. How it was when we were growing up. It was kind of a good time to be a kid and also a good time to be a teenager in the 70s and 80s. Freedom to travel across borders, freedom of speech, freedom to align with our own values and not someone else's. Freedom from worrying about stuff that isn't worth giving any fucks to, because one of my favorite authors is Mark Manson, and he wrote the book called The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. Freedom for introverts in an extroverted world. Freedom to speak up about our values. Yeah, structure and discipline, creative expression, freedom to lead, freedom that comes with risk. So, freedom in risk, freedom that comes from knowledge and mastery, feeling free in our own bodies after 50. As a practitioner, the freedom to practice how you see fit. Minimalism and materialism. That's a good one. Freedom and courage, freedom from critics and haters, free will versus determinism, freedom in the one-to-many business model, freedom from ageism, why I hate the word vacation. Let's see, freedom to indulge, boundaries, of course, that's a juicy one. The freedom to ask for help, freedom to call bullshit on a lot of the information that we're seeing coming at us. Once you get to a certain age, you're like, oh, what am I reading this? This person can barely form an English sentence. Why am I taking this at face value? And when I talk about freedom, we could actually substitute the word freedom at any time for the word empowerment. I also want to make this kind of fun in the sense that I don't want to be talking at you or just like overfilling your cup. I would love it if you listen to this, and they're going to be pretty short, and then kept thinking instead of just, being overfilled and overwhelmed, just like, okay, oh, that was just enough for me to kind of pick up from that, from her thought, and really start thinking about it from different angles. So the first thing I want to explore today is freedom from perfection. And the reason I want to do that is because I've been putting this off because of the whole perfection thing. Like even right now, I'm worried if I'm recording and if I'm going to have to do too much editing, what the lighting is like. I don't like seeing myself on camera. I love long format. I love longer videos, and I like actually having the opportunity to go a little bit more into depth with a topic, especially something like freedom. I use like shorter form videos when I have the capacity to do it, but also because I can take the longer video and then use a piece of that and repurpose it and use it for the shorter video. Okay, so I'm digressing here. So the reason it took me a long time to actually get into this, some of it was about perfectionism, but the task that I was doing before was putting together some Black Friday deals that involved a lot of attention to detail. So there was about 15 little micro problems to solve. None of it was like tech where I had to worry about coding or anything, but it was like, okay, I have to change the title. Now I have to go back into the welcome email and change the title. And then I have to change the link over here. And then I have to do this over here. And then I have to put this over. Oh, no, so it's just, you really have to think. Your brain has to work kind of hard. And my brain also has to flip into a different gear when I'm doing something like this. So it's not as much of a flowing process. So that took me a while. So, and the other thing that I was doing was a ton of research on this, on perfectionism, and looking outside of myself and thinking, oh, well, what are other people saying about perfectionism? Am I speaking to this the way that it deserves to be spoken about? But the truth is, I want to tell my own story about perfectionism and what that means for me. So there's a lot of layers to this, and it's not something that's exactly new. I'm sure you've heard people talk about perfectionism before. So, and is it necessarily a bad thing, or is it just the word? Is it a matter of semantics? Because I think that sometimes we use the word perfectionism to mean the striving for excellence. And I always think that's a good idea. So if we're working on a project and we want to just get the first version out there, like just ship it, like version 1.0, we're still striving for excellence rather than perfection. So we're going to get 1.0 out there. Then we're going to get our version 2.0. And this is a really good example. The video you're watching right now, actually the one I did yesterday was 1.0, and I recorded it when the lighting was bad. It was dark here. So maybe this is like my version 2.0. And then I'm just going to ship it. I'm going to get it out there. I'm not going to do a lot of editing, and we'll just see what happens. And then I'll get the feedback, and then I'll just keep tweaking it from there. But I have a high bar when it comes to sound. I don't like when the sound quality is bad. It just drives me nuts when I hear someone in a room and the sound quality is bad, and I have to struggle to hear what they're saying because of either an echo or their voice is too soft or something like that. Okay, so I'm digressing a little bit here. So yeah, I want to talk about perfectionism on a macro level and a micro level. So the macro level means it's kind of like being afraid to make a mistake. And I remember I was in the Air Force, and basic training, they just, and part of it was how I was raised. It was like, you better not make a mistake. You can't make a mistake. You better not make a mistake. And you know what happens when your brain goes there? See if you can guess. You make mistakes. You're going to screw up. So if my life depended right now on not flubbing anything and not tripping over my words, I guarantee you that I'd be tripping over my words. So I think that on the macro level, that it can be kind of unproductive. And this is where Mark Manson speaks about this. There's an excerpt here I'm going to read. Ever notice that sometimes when you care less about something, you do better? Notice how it's often the person who is least invested in the success of something that somehow ends up achieving it. Notice how sometimes when you stop giving a fuck, everything seems to fall into place. What's with that? So later, I'm going to talk more about the white belt mentality or beginner's mind, and how that can be actually a good thing, and not being afraid to make an ass of yourself. But right now I'm talking about perfectionism, not the striving for excellence, but perfectionism on the macro level. And this is, in my opinion, I didn't pick this up from anywhere else. That's when you're oppressed by it. You feel on a deep level, on a subconscious level, that you will never be good enough. And each time you make a mistake or even think about making a mistake, it just makes you want to like, ugh. So I think that is part of it on the macro level. And I think that could actually be detrimental. Then we have on the micro level. So that's like what I was doing previously. I had to make sure all the T's were crossed and the I's were dotted. And in the moment, I can kind of flip on that switch where I'm kind of being a perfectionist, somewhere between excellence and being a perfectionist, because when you're doing that kind of work that's detail oriented, you kind of have to double check and triple check, because worst case scenario would be someone buys something from me and they don't get their stuff. They don't get the link to download or the login information for their membership or something like that. So that's, I still have that on a micro level. Like, okay, I tested everything, but then 2 days go by and I'm thinking, well, am I sure I tested that? Is everything okay? Is someone going to complain that something's not working, or, a link is not working or something like that? So I think that it's good to have this going on, because I think that it's really popular to say right now, because I'm kind of a contrarian in some ways, to say, oh, just go with the flow. We don't really need to worry about perfectionism. We can just get it out there. And I think to a certain extent it's true, but I still think it's really important to be able to flip on that switch where you're kind of really making sure that your quality control is there. So yeah, I know that's it sounds like a paradox, and it sounds like I'm contradicting myself, and welcome to my world. I like to do that and talk about things, like I said, from all different perspectives, from up here and from underneath and from this direction and that direction, and then get feedback from you guys, because none of what I'm saying is like the gospel truth. It's just my take. And then we could share what we think about it. So really quick, I want to talk about with perfectionism, how as entrepreneurs, and some of you guys might already know this, but a lot of people don't. So I'm gonna kind of speak to this. You wear three main hats: the CEO hat, the manager and organizer hat, and then the technician or the employee hat. And I know a lot of health and wellness professionals love to say how they just want to be a technician, meaning they just want to do the work. They don't want to do all this marketing stuff. They don't want to do all, they just want to do the do the work with the people that they're used to working with on a local level, and somehow that's more human and more like real or authentic. I'm going to talk about that later because I so do not agree with that. But that's a whole other thing that I'm going to talk about later on down the road. But the truth is, if you have a business, and you guys, I might be preaching to the choir, sometimes you have to put that CEO hat on. And what that does is it forces you to make quicker decisions and just ship it and get it out there. So if I'm wearing the CEO hat, I have to make the decisions that I even have to tell myself, my inner employee is like, Julie, stop messing around with that. Stop. You need to focus on this. This is the priority right now. This is what we need to focus on because this is what we want to happen. And therefore, we have to make these quicker decisions. And that could mean that this thing that you're working on, just get it done. Okay. And the second hat that we wear is the manager, and that's the organizer and the prioritizer. Now, I know some people do spend too much time in this mode. They're so busy organizing stuff that they don't actually do the work. But I think it's really important. I think a lot of health and wellness people kind of skip this step. And it might seem kind of unnecessary. And one of the things that I do when I work with people, when I work with clients, we do foundational work, and we also do a lot of working on systems and workflow. It's so boring when you talk about it, but all it means, or when you put it that way, but all it means, the translation is simply the tools you need and the stuff you need to do to get stuff done in a way that's not taking up too much of your time. So we need to do that. So the thing that I was doing when I was setting up all my Black Friday deals, I like to create a slide deck with screenshots that shows me everything I need to do. So next time I do this, or if I have another offering next month, I need to just look at that thing and checklist, go through my checklist and get all the tasks done without having to think about it and reinvent the wheel. So that's a theme I talk about a lot, and I'm talking about it here. But the thing I like about it is that you don't have to worry so much about that perfectionism, because without that, I would have probably been almost going insane by now, trying to do everything from scratch. But I think that's what a lot of people do. They think, okay, I'm just going to go with the flow. And, it doesn't always work that way very well. Okay. And then you have your technician role, obviously. And obviously, we need to do that. We actually need to do the work, the fulfillment of the thing that we said we're going to deliver. So those are the three hats, and that's how perfectionism kind of fits in. So I think I'm going to kind of wrap that up. I just want to see what you guys think about this whole perfectionism thing. I notice that there's a lot of people that still brag about perfectionism, but that there's people that are also rebelling against it so much that there's almost kind of a backlash that might be a little bit on the other extreme. So is it about, I'm actually asking this as a question, is it about lowering the bar when we're talking about, I'm just going to get that, I'm going to ship my version 1.0 out there, and then we're just going to improve on it next time? Or do you think, and I don't think there's an absolute answer here, sometimes is it an excuse? I wonder. So sometimes we need to, in fact, pay attention to detail. So I just want to leave you with those questions. And another question, what area of your life do you think might be ruled by perfectionism? So sometimes it'll show up in some areas of our life, but not others. And I'm sure you probably heard this before, especially if you're a coach, you probably help people with this. But it's always good to be reminded and kind of think about what is taking up too much of our time as far as perfectionism, and maybe the opposite is happening. Maybe where the bar is being lowered too much in some cases, and maybe replacing it with striving for excellence. And then I also talked about creative ways to engineer higher quality into everything you do without having to constantly use so many brain cells to do that. So the fewer brain cells we have to use, the better. So Me, checklists, processes, automations, cheat sheets, and this is also about life too. This could mean making, just having, I know it sounds boring, but 10 things on the menu that you cook so you don't have to cook, or choosing a wardrobe. I'm gonna go Steve Jobs, and I wear these black tops all the time. I'm a digital nomad. I don't have access to a lot of clothes. I live in a rural area. All the clothes are awful here. So, yeah, I just show up in a black top, and then I don't worry about the rest. Getting rid of clutter, starting fresh, not being too picky about my background here. This is good enough. This is gonna have to be good enough. I can't do the fake background because I am actually using a laptop right now that doesn't have enough processing power to create, an actual background. So if I try to do that, I'm gonna look like a ghost, and it's gonna look really stupid. Like, my edges will start blurring, and then it'll be like a floating head with blurring edges, and it looks really dumb. So, uh, yeah, so that is what I wanted to talk about today: perfectionism and a brief introduction to freedom and what that means in the context of my life, but also in the context of your life. And I'm going to be doing that via storytelling and insights and maybe jumping on an occasional soapbox, but I'll let you know, soapbox warning. So it's not like I'm preaching at you. Uh, but I do like my soapboxes every once in a while. Okay, so that is all I have for today, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.